Karita, good morning. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Very, very well, always well. So tell us, I know that you and I have had a session together, and you've had a session with my brother Mark, and
Yeah.
tell us a bit about what you do, a bit about your journey, and how you came to be where you are now.
Oh God, that's a lot.
That's a lot of just tell me to shut up and stop and do one thing at a time.
No, it's all good. So yeah, I own a business called Truly You, and I work with business owners to really help them maximize their results and ambitions in life through confidently being their true self. So essentially that's through creating their personal brand. And we kind of have a two-pronged approach to this, really depending on what the client wants. But there's coaching and mentoring, which is the massive aspect of it. But also if they want to then articulate that into a real commercial brand for themselves, we do that as well through brand consultancy and design.
Amazing. And I know that when I sat with you, we were doing a bit of a discovery around my purpose in life. And yes, and that was that unraveled a lot of things, and there was a lot of digging that was done in that session, and I found it, I personally found it really fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real skill that you have to be able to work with someone to dig that deep.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's amazing because it's you're peeling all these layers off the onion. How did you learn that skill and developing that and working with people to peel those layers?
It's quite an interesting so you mentioned earlier about journey. So I actually spent a lot of my career, or 20 years of my career, really in corporate management, marketing, brand, and then I moved client side over to agency side. But whilst I was in my career, I was fortunate enough to work for a really big organization that really endorsed a coaching culture.
Yep.
So I was really coaching in the workplace for about 13 years, and I absolutely loved it. And I've kind of always been able to it's funny, it's something that I've realized now. So I'm all into like superpowers, like what's your superpower? So you can really bring that out into your brand. And I think as I went through my career, I realized that I had this ability to be able to talk to people, and they were able to open up to me and allow themselves to be vulnerable. And I absolutely loved coaching. So it's really kind of like how I got to it. I don't know, I got a really good feeling out of it. And then it was probably about 7-8 years ago, I considered actually starting a coaching business then, and I didn't. It wasn't the right time. I was in my comfort zone. I had my regular salary from work and what have you. And then a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago now, I owned a business and realized that I just wasn't aligned to it. It wasn't really the right thing for me. I wanted to go off and do my own thing, and decided to bite the bullet and do it alone and start Truly You. And it's kind of
amazing.
the best thing that I ever did. But being able to, it's just about talking to people and allowing people to have that space to talk and to be themselves. That's really where the answers lie. And it's just through probing. And with being able to get to that level and being able to unearth these things. I mean, you're massive into personal development yourself. And I think even when you're in those sessions, no matter how much work you do on your own, until you're actually with someone one-on-one and allowing yourself to, be asked these questions and dig deeper. That's where the real golden nuggets lie.
It almost comes to a point where there's a real me that definitely a couple of those. I was like, oh my God, like, and you just realize that all these things are all within you. They're all within your mind or within your body somewhere that you just haven't admitted to yourself.
Absolutely.
And once you do, you can see how much growth can come from that. And I'm sure that you've had many amazing stories with that. I'm assuming as well that you would have a lot of people that would resist a lot of that change.
I'm actually very careful about the clients I work with.
Okay.
So,
so that answers that one.
Yeah, no, because I work with, generally all of my clients that I work with are determined and ambitious people. They want to take themselves to the next level. And I make it very clear from the offset to them that to allow this, for them to get the best out of themselves, they're going to have to surrender to the process and to go through it and allow themselves to open up. And I'd say in 3 years since having my business, I've only had one client that resisted.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate with that. No, it's yeah.
Because that's, I mean, I suppose that's the biggest thing for people, isn't it? Is not wanting to change and not wanting to grow.
Yeah.
But if you know, like you said, if you're in that headspace, then that's what it's all about, and you're up for that challenge.
Yeah. Unfortunately, and this is what I see the challenge is that people see coaching and personal development as a last resort, whereas if they actually looked at it in terms of it's something for their growth. And I see this a lot with business owners, especially, as they are, you know, they're all guns blazing, they're full of ambition and passion, and they start their business and they go and get their logo off Fiverr and they get going. They're like, right, this is it, I'm up, I'm running. And then a couple of years in, they realize that, oh, they're at this sticking point. They're not really achieving what it is that they thought that they would be. And it's because they've created a business on how they think it should be, rather than it being created from their own personal viewpoint and being able to really leverage their skills, their, you know, passions, their values, their motivators, and all these great things that make them them haven't actually come through into their business. Whereas if they'd actually done the coaching to start off with and the mentoring, and
understanding
really
themselves and what they
foundations
actually,
properly, they'd find. And I do think that's a lot of the reason why many small businesses do kind of fall down a little bit, is because they haven't set this foundation right. Because as you know, success in business is really 80% mindset. So unless you've got that foundation there and you're mentally in that space and operating in your genius zone, you won't be able to get the best out of yourself.
Well, you know, that's the hard part too, isn't it? Because and I notice on your website it's got balance the grind, and it is very much about balancing that grind. Because when you first start off in a business and you have all this, you're in that really creative space and have all these amazing ideas, and then you jump into the business and then you just slip straight into that grind, and you slip straight into doing all these things that you're probably not so good at doing, and you're really not doing the 2 or 3 things that you're amazing at. So you're in this grind, and then 12 months, 2 years later, you're like, how the hell did I get here? I really don't like all this stuff. This is shit. I need help. And like you said, because you've forgotten about the passion that you were bringing to the business and the skills that you were bringing to the business. And you're just focusing on in the business. And I'm sure that you've seen a hell of a lot of that with business and people in business.
I mean, I saw this only yesterday with a client who is sat on a gold mine, absolute, and not able to actually never really accepted herself and like all of her unique qualities that she brings, and always kind of like kept herself small, and has reached this cap in her business, you know, where she just can't really seem to break this ceiling. And really, she thought she had a money block. She doesn't have a money block. She's got a personal block, which is this fear of judgment and getting through that, and really just being able to shift that. And all it is it's small tweaks, but it's consistent and it's over time. And eventually you're going to see this transformation. And you're all into energy as well, you know, when you are in your when you're in your zone, and when you're operating at that energetic level where you're bringing all of the great stuff out of you, then that's where all of the opportunities and possibilities are. So until you can actually get your mind into that space where you can tap into it, you will find that you'll reach this cap. So it's like, okay, well, how am I going to break through this? And
it's a fascinating thing too, isn't it? Because, you know, I've obviously been through that, and I'm sure a lot of people have, but the awareness that you get when you actually realize what is this block, and you're always looking for, it's an external block, and it's got to be this situation or that person or this situation. But, you know, and I've found a lot through, and Mark has too, through meditation, that all of a sudden you get this realization like, oh shit, these blocks are actually me. and they're all within me. And it's, some really deep diving you have to do to find that. But then, how you deal with that and how you assess that, that's a whole nother thing together. But just the realization of shit, it's all just me.
Yeah. It's all just you.
Yeah. Just get yourself to blame and that's it. But so along your journey, I'm sure you would have had some, and we did have a chat to someone after Graham about it last week, the journey that you go on.
Yeah.
And even Steve was saying that, it didn't feel like, he felt like he was climbing mountains, but boulders were falling down and he had to try and dodge those. What's your experience been like with leaving a comfortable job and then starting, your own business, the hurdles along the way, the minefields along the way. It's hard bloody work. Yeah.
Well, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. You think that you've got 20 years in business, and I owned a business or co-owned a business before Truly You, but actually going off and doing it on your own. Yeah, it's and especially when you're trying to navigate social media and things like that, and really trying to, it's ironic, really trying to work out who you are and what you're comfortable with and trying to get yourself through each of these things. And you mentioned it a moment ago about doing things that might not necessarily be in your skill set that you take on board. And when you're doing those things, realizing that your energy's getting zapped, and you're trying to do things on a shoestring to start off with, just to get it going. I think the biggest hurdles with starting it have really been knowing where to look, and you're trying to do things sensibly and logically, but it's all a journey. And I always say, people say, well, what's your biggest advice with starting a small business or what have you? It's really about the fact that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and you've just got to be kind on yourself, because there's only 24 hours in a day. And as business owners, you are there, working your ass off trying to get
absolutely.
So, and I think it gets easier as you go along. To start off with, it's much harder, but as I said, it's all about getting to that point where you're operating in your genius zone and you're starting to see the fruits of your labor. And and this is the biggest thing with mindset as well, is training your brain. If you've got this belief that it's going to happen, and you actually can visualize this happening and getting into that space where you're experiencing the feelings of the results without actually being there yet. That's the key thing. So I present at Graham Holmes' Money Mental Masterclass, and as part of my presentation there's this clip by Conor McGregor, and he talks about visualization in that, and I think that's a massive thing, and that comes into meditation as well. When you're in a deep meditation and you've been in that meditation, this might sound a bit woo-woo to some people watching this, but if you're in a deep meditation and you're, I'm talking about an hour and a half meditation, when you're at that point and you're starting to see your life in front of you and what could actually be achieved, it makes me go. I'm big into goosebumps. I'm going goosebumpy thinking about it. I've had this a few times where you can actually see yourself in your future, and it's bizarre. But the moment that you get to that is the moment that you're kind of taking actions towards that without even knowing, and having that belief that what it is that you really want, you'll get.
100% agree, and I can absolutely smell a bit of Dr. Joe Dispenza coming out there, which I've got written down, and I do want to ask you about that a little bit later. But so tell me about when so you were saying before about people's superpowers, because that's one thing that that I've learned over time, and I've noticed that a lot of leaders had done, and they talk about. They were never this person. They had to become this person. They had to write down and visualize, like what you're saying, see this person they want to be and make that person up. And that's one thing that I've had to do as well, to break away from, old habits or, old self, and really say, okay, well, it's not who am I, it's who do I want to be. And journaling that, and then meditating in that space. For the average sort of person who's not into the mindfulness or not into the meditation, how do you encourage that? And how do you encourage people to get into that?
Well, I always think the first stage in any personal development is actually understanding who you are first, who you really are, not the comfortable you, the real you. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about who were you as a toddler? So who was that who was that person, you know? Dan, who were you as a little boy?
You're delving,
yeah, like,
delving quite, yeah.
So what is it like? How would your parents have described you? And because you essentially are that person now.
Yeah.
But as we get older, we water ourselves down to suit others' expectations and situations and scenarios. So we kind of forget who that real person is. We need to unearth that first. Once you understand who that person is and you accept that person, I'm talking flaws and all and weaknesses and all these things.
Yeah.
Once you actually embrace those as well, that's when you can start actually thinking, okay, the person that I need to be able to draw out all of my strengths, all of my values, and start really living aligned to who I am. That's when you can become this person. So I always say I'm not into changing someone. I'm actually into bringing the real them out and allowing that person to shine.
Because it's all there, right? You know, we talked
all
about
there.
that earlier. It's all totally inside you, but it's just about you know, unlocking that person or unchaining that person, because everyone has got that ability inside them.
Yeah.
So challenges that you've been through, and obviously, you know, it's a pretty is it a discussed thing at the moment? I'm not sure, but there's I've talked to Graham and to Steve about it, and we discuss it often with people that right now there's a hell of a lot of anxiety, especially going through the world and Melbourne at the moment, and a lot of people going through depression. What are some of the things and some of the advice that you would give to people in the current situation, and people going through anxiety in our situation now, but also in day-to-day life and facing depression? How do you handle that? How do people try and get themselves up and about and get through that?
I think, we're living in strange times at the moment. I think one of the biggest things is to try and allow yourself to not be drawn into the fear aspect of it. And almost to try and remain centered, because eventually this will pass. This is just a passing time, and it's just about trying to take it, each step at a time whilst we're in this. Anxiety is something that you can work through. In the first instance, it would be about, okay, we're trying to draw yourself from within. Like, what is it that brings you this happiness? What is it that brings you this fulfillment that you can focus on in the short term and really try and allow yourself to get through? It's a hard question. It is, because there's so many, and it's all down to the individual. From an anxiety point of view, fortunately, I wouldn't say that I've been depressed before, but there's definitely been times when I've been very anxious, and it caused me to burn out twice, anxiety. And and it's really, it is about taking that time to focus on yourself, reaching out and asking for help, and not feeling like you're alone in it, because there's always help at hand, and it is about talking things through. And I don't know.
It's quite an individual thing, isn't it? Like, for each person, it feels so different and so lonely. And I think that there's, the hardest part is for a lot of people is reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'm going through some real deep shit here, and I've got some anxiety, or I've got some depression." I think that's a real stumbling block to try and that first stage of reaching out.
Because it's hard, because when you're reaching out, you're actually admitting that you've got a problem. And a lot of people don't want to admit that. Their ego kicks in, which is there to protect them, so they want to keep themselves safe, and they think, oh, it's okay, I can deal with this, I should be able to handle this. Especially people that are in business or high up in corporate and what have you. They think, I'm a leader, this is what I'm here to do, why can't I just work this out myself? And so you end up on this spiral of negativity that can draw you down to this point where you do reach your breaking point. But the trick is to not allow it to get that far, to know the signs, to kind of know your limits, and to realize that it's not a bad thing to put your hand up and ask for help. the last thing you want is to someone to hit this rock bottom point, because then the journey to get up again is so much harder.
Yeah, it is quite hard, but it's also too, you know, everyone goes through it, and everyone goes through a lot of bullshit in their life. And I think that's part of life. You know, I think part of life is, you know, is that journey, is that struggle, and building those inner muscles to be able to deal with and cope with certain situations. And it's there for me, it all just feels like tests. And some days I just think to myself, why this test today?
Yeah.
But you know, when I come through that, there's always an amazing lesson that I've learned from it. And it's been able to look for that lesson too.
Yeah, absolutely. Where I always believe that wherever you are right now is where you need to be. And to take on those lessons, take on the learnings, and be grateful for the experience. You know, like when I think back to when I was burnt out, I was like, God, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And hand on heart, I mean that now. Like I believe that, you know, if I hadn't have actually experienced that, there's no way I'd be doing what I do now. So yeah, forever grateful for each of the knocks that you get along the way, because there's always an upside to it at some point.
There's a lot of learning that comes out of it for sure. And so talk to us about you know, one of my favorite subjects at the moment is meditation. And I did hear you say before that you do some hour to hour and a half meditation sessions.
No, I'm flat out at the moment. I'm finding it difficult to fit that length of time in. But yeah, it's something that I do for at least 10 minutes a day, every day. Just to, you know, enable you to like slow your mind down, get centered, get clear, and really allow yourself to listen to that inner voice and to, you know, hear what really comes through. We're so bombarded with messages, work, goodness knows what, all the time, that our brains are constantly overwhelmed. So being able to meditate and actually have that moment of peace and just to slow yourself down is amazing. I mean, 10 years ago, I'd have completely poo-pooed about meditation. I'd be like, what are you on about? But now it's like a daily thing, you know?
Yeah. So every day, you're doing it every day now?
Every day I do at least 10 minutes. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And if I do get an hour to myself and no one in the house and without the dog barking, then I'll try and do one of the longer ones. Yeah.
And so how often when you, because I'm doing one that I want to talk to you about in a moment, which, and I know that you'll know exactly what it is. How often do you sit in that space of meditation and then your body's like, come on, I want to move. Come on, I'm itchy. Come on, I've got stuff to do. And your brain's like, I got to check my emails. I got to check my messages, I
think the more you practice, the easier it is to get into that state. So it doesn't actually take, I mean, when a lot of people say, so especially with clients, then I say, you know, do these meditations, do this. They're like, oh God, I can't slow my mind down. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that. Or they say, you know, I've tried meditation before, it doesn't work. I'm like, okay, so let's not think about meditation for the moment. Let's just think about breathing. So one of the things that I always say to people, if they haven't meditated before, if they've struggled with it, is to focus on their breathing. And to do that, I just say, right, okay, well, you know, close your eyes, relax, you know, either sit in a chair or sit on the floor, and really just focus on this part of your forehead, and then just breathe in for 5. Hold it and acknowledge the breath at the top, and breathe out for 5. And once you can actually master the art of doing that, and you're focusing on the counting, you're actually training yourself to get into this meditative state. So then you can start, if you want to, doing guided meditations. I mean, I think guided meditations are the best. I think if I was left to my own devices and just to concentrate, I'd just fall asleep. So.
And that's, you know, it's a really curious thing, because I was, you know, forever, like I'm one of those people that once I latch onto something and I think this is amazing, I am at everyone I know to be like, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to. So, you know, when and Mark and I've been on a bit of that journey with meditation. Mark's probably been doing it for, you know, the best part of I suppose 20 years, and I've been on and off for the last 10.
Yeah.
And you know, having the you know, the amazing office environment that I've got, I've just been hammering people like, you got to do meditation, you got to do this. But what I forgot, and a lot of people had come back to me and said, yeah, but I don't know how to meditate. And I'm like, you just do this, just listen to this. And then they come back and I said, how'd you go? And they go, but I still don't get it. Like I need some guidance with it. And, you know, silly me had just thought, okay, just give them this and go and they'll be able to learn it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that. And I remembered back to when I was doing it and I thought, shit, I had to start with 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and 3 minutes was all I could do. But eventually after, you know, 2-3 weeks, I was like, oh, maybe I'll try 5 and then maybe I'll try 10. But, you know, and there's something in that. And I think what you were just saying with getting people to breathe through it and focus on that breathing is you know, it's an amazing thing. But do you think that initially when people starting out that they do need a bit of coaching to get into meditation?
I think they just need to take it easy on themselves. As you say, it's like 3 minutes. I mean, I don't know whether they necessarily need coaching as such for the meditation.
Well, just guide, you know, like a guidance or a guide. You know, sit with them. And because a lot of people that I've spoken to about it said, well, why don't you sit with me and we can do it together? And maybe just that connectability with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I haven't actually found that. So clients that I've worked with, I had one guy that was like, he was very reluctant to try it. And then after a week of doing it, he was like, oh my God, like I'm really like enjoying this now. But that was just doing the breathing. He hadn't even gone into any guided meditations at that point, but he was just really chuffed with himself. And as you say, he had actually built it up. So he'd started with 2 minutes and then 3 minutes and 5 minutes. And after a couple of weeks, he was at 10 minutes. Yeah. Now, I actually ask clients to do this anyway, because there's some techniques that I use on clients, NLP techniques and what have you, where I need them to be able to relax. Yeah. And I need them to be able to tap into their subconscious. Now, to be able to do this, they have to be in a relaxed state. Yeah. So if they've never got used to breathing or meditation, it can make the process harder. You know, they're a bit like, oh, this is a bit weird. Yeah. So every client, I'm like, okay, try and do the breathing, try and do the meditation. I think they can do it on their own, as long as they're gentle with themselves and just keep practicing.
Yeah, and don't, I suppose for the first part, you know, don't expect too much. Just you know, just imagine it as some time out to just you know, let thoughts come up and let them flow past, and you know, you don't necessarily need to reflect on those things. Just see what comes up and see how you feel afterwards. Yeah. And that's so one really interesting thing that I read on your website. I was like, we have to talk about this.
Oh no, what's this?
was Dr. Joe Dispenza. Yeah. And one of the go-to books that you have as your Bible is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Now, I just literally finished this book 2 weeks ago.
What do you think?
I fucking loved it.
A game changer, huh?
It absolutely is. And I'm, you know, I'm in, I think this is my 4th week of the meditation. So I'm on 75 minutes a day meditation. Yeah. And I have to coach myself every day into that space and say, all right, we are not moving for 75 minutes. And, you know, the amazing, you know, the more that I'm doing it and getting into the 75 minutes a day now, the things that I'm learning about myself and all the roadblocks that I've been blaming, you know, external things or people for is all just this bullshit cooped up inside of me. So tell me about your experience with this book and what you got out of it and, you know, what you still get out of it. I'm really fascinated to talk about this.
Well, I think for me that I'd never really done any extended meditation. So with this book, you're doing a lot of reading really before you get up to the point where you start doing the meditations. Yeah. And so for me, it was the first time that my mind had actually got to this point of visualization where it felt so real that when I came out of it, I can't even describe it. You know this. It's hard. It's hard to describe. I knew that what I was seeing is exactly where I need to be heading. Yeah. So you know, logic says to me, okay, it might not actually be that exact vision. Yeah. But there's kind of 3, and I've done these meditations loads, and there's 3 things that kind of like come out for them in me in terms of future, and being able to see myself in these different scenarios, and each of them feels so real. And one of the ones actually was So I used to be really scared of public speaking, and I mean,
petrified.
20 years in corporate, I'd have to be in big meetings, I'd have to present. I would spend, when I knew that there was one of these like presentations coming up, I'd be like shitting myself like days before.
I would not think that.
I wouldn't sleep. It was
wow.
So that's like where my anxiety, and then this is where this mask came in, of actually having to feel like I needed to be someone different to who I really was. Hence truly you. That's how the business is. So it's about being your true self. And so with the visualizations, one of them was, when did I first start reading that book? It was probably about March, April last year. And one of the things of visualizing was me being on stage. And at that point, it wasn't even in my sights. It wasn't something that I'd even like considered. And so this kept coming up, and so when I was doing these visualizations, I was stood on a stage, I could see the audience, and I'm talking like bigger audiences as well, and I was thinking, oh God, this can't be right. And I'd actually booked myself in for this presentation course, which was about speaking, but it was more in terms of doing it kind of like locally, or workshops and stuff like that. And anyway, I stayed with it and was able to break through some of these barriers in my mind. And then, March this year, so I went to one of Graham's events last year, towards the end of last year, and we got talking, and he said, would you come and be the mindset coach for Infinity? And I was like, yeah, you know, of course. Like, what an honor to be asked, you know. And so he said, oh, so I need you to like come to Melbourne, and this is how I met your brother, Mark. Come to Melbourne and present and speak. And it was the weirdest thing, because I got up on stage, I was really excited about it, and
it's amazing.
And I was like, oh my God, like, couldn't believe it. But this all stems through doing these meditations and getting comfortable in that, and being able to visualize it and take yourself to this point that you haven't been to, and get used to the feelings and the experience before it's even happened, so it's no surprise, you know, training your brain.
You know, even that sort of stuff is you know, that's not easy stuff to walk into, and to just jump into a meditation like, right, bang, change, here I go.
No.
I'm you know, all this new person, or walking into this new mindset. It's, you know, 7 weeks or 8 weeks of really intense sitting with yourself and realizing all these things you've been hiding from yourself. And but you know, and you know, again, going back to what we were talking about before, going through that journey of life, that you have these challenges for a reason. And when you start really pushing through these challenges, the reward is amazing. And like you're saying, you did these meditations, and then bang, you're up on stage and you know, talking to a crowd of people and presenting. Like, it's amazing to know that you just need to be able to sit with that and admit to yourself all of these things that you're afraid of.
Yeah, because we're the only things getting in our own way. And I honestly believe this, and this really comes into like my purpose and tapping into my why, which is so my why is around like my girls, and I really want them to believe that anything is possible for them, but it comes into purpose. And that's I genuinely believe that if you put yourself out there, and you get yourself into this state of belief that you can make anything happen. You can get over yourself and get through your hurdles to get there, but it's going to be bloody uncomfortable.
Absolutely. You've got to walk across that river. And it's super uncomfortable, because you're exposing all this stuff, but most of the stuff is a lot of bullshit that you've heard from other people. You can deflect, but for some reason we've all decided to take all that stuff on and create, you know, it's almost as if we create this person who we expect that everyone else expects that person to be.
That is what I see all of the time. And and this is essentially why I do what I do, which is to take this mask off. Because when you're yourself,
Yeah.
That's where all the good stuff happens. Like when you're trying to be someone you're not, the amount of energy that you use to try and be this person, and you're not going to get what you really want. You know, you've just got to allow yourself to be, but you've got to get comfortable being.
Correct.
You've got to be comfortable being that person first, and then
And how rewarding is it seeing people come through that, and you know, seeing people that you're working with that have, you know, started with nothing or no drive, and then seeing them with all this ambition and passion and goals.
Oh, it's I can't even explain. It's the best. I've got the best job in the world. I absolutely love it. Yeah. And one of the things that I always thought was my biggest weakness, and I always thought was the thing holding me back, was my sensitivity. And it's the one thing that I've realized over the last year, which is, you know, it's amazing when you see that. And I actually, when my clients finish their sessions and they get to the end of their program, it's incredible to see their transformation. And there has been a few tears been shed, happy tears.
I'm sure there's been a few sad tears, but as long as it always ends on on some happy tears.
There's sad tears within, because everyone's got their story and everyone's got, you know, the journey that they've been on. Not I haven't cried in sessions sad-wise, but in terms of happiness at the end of seeing them, and just seeing them just be themselves is the most incredible feeling.
Completely blossoming into a new person, and understanding all those things, and understanding why they've been through depression or anxiety, or just, you know, a lot of people just beat themselves up about all these things that are completely unnecessary.
We're our own worst critics all of the time, and continually put this light on ourselves that, you know, we're not this or we're not that, instead of actually, you know, thinking about how great we are at certain things, and you know, what we actually have to offer, and how we can actually add value.
And that's, you know, I spoke about that the other day with someone, saying that a lot of that is a lot of bullshit that we get off social media. You know, you get on Facebook and you see all these people that are doing all those amazing things, and on Instagram is all this bullshit of people on these amazing holidays or making all this money and doing this and doing that. But, you know, and Graham Home was saying, well, you know, I want to see a picture of a guy down on the ground in the fetal position, rocking backwards and forwards, because he's had a shit day at work, or he's had a shit moment at work, and because that's the real stuff. That's the stuff that we all can relate to, and be like, that's true. Been there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do live in this environment in social media where it's very easy to compare yourself to, you know, your peers and how well they're doing, and to think, oh, well, I'm not like them, and you don't need to be like them.
Well, you know, people posting 1,000 selfies of you know, of themselves all over it, and straight away I think, what? Okay, I don't know. But it's you know, that's really prevalent in today's society, just people comparing themselves to all this shit that they see on there. So I think it's that, you know, that's definitely one thing that for me at the moment, I'm doing a bit of a hiatus on it. I got sucked into just being on there all the time and looking, and I'm like, what am I doing? This doesn't serve me in any way, shape or form, just absorbing myself and losing this time. Whereas, you know, I can go and read a book or jump on, and I'm doing an online course at the moment with Jordan Peterson, in psychology, and the things that you learn about people are fascinating, which are all the things that you would know about people now and get to see on a daily basis. And I'm, you know, I'm sure that you know, the amount of people that you've been able to help out and see those transformations is just an amazing experience to be going through every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always something that can be worked on. There's always something that can be improved. And I still think the biggest thing that surprises me is that what people think is their issue or the challenge isn't the issue or challenge at all. It's something completely different. And when you get to that point and you're able to reframe certain patterns of, you know, thinking and behaviors, which really mostly stem from when we're kids. That's where, you know, when we start thinking about these limiting beliefs or emotional blockages that we've got, it's got nothing to do with things that have happened in our adult life. You know, I had one woman having real issues at work, you know, being herself and really struggling to build relationships at work with colleagues and stuff. And it stemmed from when she was 4 years old playing a board game with her brother and he laughed at her. And
it can be the simplest of things, yeah.
The simplest of things, and you know, you work through that. You change, replace the energy. Bit woo-woo. You replace the energy with a different energy and remove that. You're changing the neural networks in your brain when you're going through this process. And seeing the difference in her was amazing.
So just before we wrap it up, what is one thing, if you could give one message to everyone out there, what would that be?
One message. Well, the biggest piece of advice that I was ever given was a few years ago from my dad. And it was when I was feeling really down and going through the burnout, and I'd like been chewing his ear off for about 10 minutes, whinging and groaning about what was happening. And he sat there really quiet. And then he looked at me, he said, "When are you going to take responsibility for this?" And it hit me like a sledgehammer in the face. And I was like, sat there, I was like, "Oh, you bastard." How can you say this? And it took me a couple of days to process it. And as I said, this is a few years ago, and a couple of days to process it. And then I was like, you know what? That is the best thing that anyone's ever said to me. So this would be my biggest advice to everyone, which is just take responsibility for who you are, where you're at, and find this way from within to be able to move on and move forward through it. Because once you accept responsibility for it, the world's your oyster. It really is.
That's admitting, isn't it? It's just admitting that I'm responsible for this and moving on. And that is that's something really brilliant to finish on. Karita, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
It's been an amazing chat.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Thank you so much, Dan.
I could have kept going about the Dr. Joe stuff for ages and ages.
You've got work to do.